Before we begin our conversation, I want to make a few preliminary remarks. First, over and over, people talk about the need to talk about race. We say we need more dialogue, but that actually rarely happens. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have this series. In America today, there are certain beliefs about race which I think actually mitigate against our having these conversations. And I'd just like to introduce a few of these, what I call loops. Loop one is racial bias can only be proved if someone openly admits they are a racist and have acted in a racially biased way. Since such admissions do not generally occur, racism does not exist. Now, unless you think that this is ridiculous, actually the Supreme Court actually ruled according to that. When the Supreme Court was presented with racial disparities in the death penalty in Georgia, which there was clear statistical evidence of, the Supreme Court said, the statistics do not prove that. You have to have somebody saying, I actually discriminated against blacks. So that's one loop. Loop two is, I have not seen or experienced racism, therefore racism does not exist. Number three is, not talking about race is a sign that racism is no longer present. Talking about race causes problems and tension. Not talking about race is therefore the best way to solve any problems concerning race, which might still exist. If no one talks about race, that proves racism does not exist. Loop four. Silence about race is proof one is not a racist, i.e., I don't even give a thought to considering the world that way. If I talk about race, I might say something which will offend someone, or I'll be charged with being a racist. Therefore, I should never talk about race. If no one talks about race, racism doesn't exist. Number five, racism is a problem of the past. It is no longer a major factor in American society. Those who bring up charges of racism, therefore, are living in the past or viewing the current American society through the lens of the past. Such people will not let the past go. Their inability to let the past go is a source of the vast majority of racial tensions that now exist in American society, which is one of the reasons why, what state is it that's trying to ban, I think it's Arizona, trying to ban AP history? In contrast to this, we have all these statistics. The United States incarcerates more African Americans than apartheid South Africa. The race gap in wealth in the United States right now between median white family and the median black family is 18-fold. That's greater than the black-white wealth gap was in apartheid South Africa. Just think about that. On any given day, a black person in Minnesota is more than 20 times more likely to be stopped for a traffic offense than a white person. Average disparities in the state in ratios of arrest rates: African American to white 10 to 1, Latino to white 4 to 1, American Indian to white 3 to 1. So we have this contrast between this idea that racism doesn't exist and all these racial inequities, which are actually there in statistics that we all know. So I would offer a contrast to this to the work of artists of color who are constantly examining facets of race in America and their lives as people of color. Jeff Chan, in his recent book, Who We Be, The Colorization of America, he examines the issues of race over the last 50 years in terms of cultural changes and artistic production, particularly by artists of color. And here's what he says. Here is where artists and those who work and play in the culture enter. They help people to see what cannot yet be seen, hear the unheard, tell the untold. They make change feel not just possible, but inevitable. Every moment of major social change requires a collective leap of imagination. Change presents itself not only in spontaneous and organized expressions of unrest and risk, but in explosions of mass creativity. So, those interested in transforming society might assert cultural change always precedes political change. So I repeat that. Cultural change always precedes political change. Put another way, political change is the last manifestation of cultural shifts that have already occurred. And I would say these artists are all involved in those cultural shifts. The shifts where we're preparing for a country where we will no longer have a white majority sometime around 2040. Beyond this, I mean, as everyone knows, in the last year, we've had an explosion of activist movement around the issues of race, around the shootings of Michael Brown and Tamir Rice, the choking death of Eric Garner, Black Lives Matter, the Million Artists Movement. So I think we're gonna look, 10, 20 years from now, back at this time and this year as a crucial turning point in the ways, at least in certain facets of our society, we talk about and deal with race. So, before we begin formal questions, I just want each of the panelists to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your art, and your participation in the Twin Cities arts and activist communities, whatever you want to say about yourselves. So, we'll start with Tish.
My name is Tish Jones, and I tend to get thrown the ball first on panels.
That's because you're such a great hitter.
Very witty. My name is Tish Jones. I have been, I started off as a student of the art scene in the Twin Cities. I'm born and raised here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Graduated from St. Paul Central High School, so came through CTT, and CTT, exposed me really to all of the phenomenal folks that make up this community, or was a catalyst to my meeting those folks. I began to consider, a professional career as an artist. Man, I'm dating myself, but like 11 years ago. So, I've been practicing in the scene locally and nationally for 11 years, and I'm committed to, creating a space for other folks, I hope that my work helps other folks, serves as a springboard or the catalyst for other folks and their action and their entry point into this work as professionals or into this work as, committed community members, dedicated critical thinkers, etc.
My name is Sean Webster, and my work is involved in a number of things that I think at heart kind of question how we legitimate, the question of legitimacy. So I've always been interested in publishing in books, so that was like an easy sort of entry point for me into the work of the word, writing interesting stories. Virginia Hamilton, her work was really inspiring to me as a kid. I was just in Yellow Springs and saw her house. And then started asking questions about learning about the history of folks like Broadside Press and Third World Press and Third Woman Press, Kitchen Table Woman of Color Press, these sorts of spaces, it's set me on fire, that folks like Audre Lorde called up Barbara Smith and said, we gotta do something about publishing. The shit is crazy, essentially. And that they brought folks together to say that, we need to be publishing the work of women of color because this work is not coming out like it should, and so to me, I thought about the work of publishing first as an entry point for thinking about how, that that is radical work. You know, that's important work. And from there also, like, you know, bookstores were always important to me, and so that's a part of, like, you know, the entry point into thinking about, like, you know, that we needed other kinds of spaces to be able to share that work, and that the bookstore as a space is a space to do not just like something commercial, that folks like Louis Michaud and their Harlem bookstore served as meeting place, as a place where Malcolm X went to study, as a place where Nikki Giovanni found her work floating through and finding audiences, you know, where jazz musicians came to play and people came to love, you know, that's important. And so I think of place as political work and space as political work, you know. So yeah, and I write some, and I like that, but you know, been having interesting conversations about what I think that means, and we'll probably get more into that, but that's a little bit about me.
Cool. My name is Kyle. My stage name is Wante. I moved here maybe 8 years ago. And I moved here because Shay Cage and E.G. Bailey, who some people in the audience may know, signed me to their record label. And I think that is meaningful to me because my whole history with hip-hop, with spoken word, slam poetry, and with activism has always been very relationship-based. Because like my own actual personality, like I'm not the type to like put myself out there or get involved in things or leave my house ever. But because the people in my life, including family, including friends, including professional acquaintances, like consistently have challenged me to do that. And so where that's led to today, I'm the communications director of True Art Speaks, and I am incredibly grateful to just kind of be Tisha's henchman. I don't know if you probably want to put it like that, but it's been incredible. You know, we've been running this conference for the last 5 hours here today, and I'm gonna be a little fried. I can't speak for Tish, but so doing the True Art Speak stuff, I tour as Wante. I play spoken word shows largely at colleges and largely themed spoken word shows where I'll go and perform for an hour, but then facilitate a conversation based on that performance, usually around issues of power and identity and positionality, stuff like that. I'm also a grad student. I'm at the U right now doing an interdisciplinary master's program around social justice education and kind of mass media, social media stuff through an arts lens, like smashing all those different things together. I'm really interested in poetry as independent media, as a way to communicate, a way to just, you know, talk to people. Yeah.
What's up? That's just how I break the ice. What's up? Hey, I'm Shava. I guess like I don't know. I guess we're like telling our backstory or whatever. That sounds like it's happening. I was like 13. Started writing for myself. All my writing was like super politically charged, but like not in relation. Like I didn't show it to anyone. And then at the same time, I was doing activism work at my junior high, and I started the GSA at my junior high. And so, like, I was doing these things because I was just, like, bored, impatient, and angry. And, like, somebody had to do it, and so I figured I had to. And it wasn't until I went to Central High School and joined the Central Touring Theater that I really merged the two, the art and the, like, activism at once. So now I just, like, I don't know, people call me and they're like, yo, you want to do some? And I'm like, cool, yeah, I'll do it. And I work with True Art Speaks just like whenever I can, you know. I do like sex ed, so I like do presentations, like aside from like racial work, which I am very involved in and do a lot of work with. I also teach sexual education. I work at a children's rec center teaching African diaspora through art and science. I run a writing circle. I drink lots of coffee and have a lot of conversations. And that's about what I do with my life.
Okay, great. Thank you.